possible encounter from a Michigan nature park worker. For my safety, I do not want to reveal which park system I work for, but it is important to the story that I work a position at a Michigan nature park not entirely dissimilar to that of a park ranger. My job duties usually include manning the entry booth, locking up the buildings at night, and although not a usual duty, sometimes they ask me to walk or take a park vehicle through some of the trails, as I am on the younger side, but still have several years of experience at the park. I'm a relatively experienced outdoorsman. I've had some odd things happen to me while on the job that I can't quite explain. I'm decently well versed in some areas of the paranormal, and although not entirely relevant, it's of note that I am also a Norse pagan, as part of a family belief, and often wear protective symbols as well. And to be honest, I've started wearing them more since these odd things have been happening. I've tried looking into it myself, but overall I'm overwhelmed and not sure where to look, so a friend suggested I ask a forum like this about my experiences. There are two things in particular I want to ask about. Thing one, I usually work the night shift, and this night in particular it was raining a lot, and the conditions were getting unsafe. I was posted out in the booth, which is multiple miles from the office, so when things took a turn for the worse, my boss radioed me back. Some people who don't spend a lot of time in the woods don't realize how dark deep woods can get, much less in the dark at night. But I had both a flashlight and the light from the booth, which gave me probably 30 feet of visibility, and when I went to grab my stuff so I can lock up the booth and get to my car, I swore I saw something that moved very human-like, but moved in a really odd way, like the only way I can describe it is if a horse-deer hybrid tried to run like a person. But there were no people out there, and it was most definitely not a deer. I'm probably not describing it in the best way, but it was very off. So I got to my car ASAP, and it didn't start right away. A bit odd, but not entirely out of character for my car. But when I turned the key a second time, I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and it looked like whatever it was had gotten closer. The drive goes without incident, but I'm still off about what I saw, and when I get closer I radio in to see if they need me to pick anyone up. And the radio doesn't work right, which was very out of character. These radios are designed to work in awful conditions, and I was the closest I'd been to any sort of signal in a while. I chalked it up to the weather and pulled into the office, but as I do, something runs past me. I did not get a good look at what it was, but it was not a person, and I'm telling you, there's not an animal in that woods that I know of that looks like either of the things I saw, and I just can't seem to shake it. Thing two, this happened more recently, and is what prompted me to finally reach out to a forum of some kind. I was walking the trails for security purposes close to closing. We close around 11 p.m. and start a final walkthrough around 9 p.m. We do this to make sure no one's stuck on the trail or hurt, so they aren't stuck overnight when there's fewer staff and none that patrol those trails. So I was walking one of our trails, and I was pretty deep in the woods already, as I'm a fairly fast hiker, and this is a trail I know well. I was already about 2 miles into the trail when things start to get weird. I hear a noise off in the distance, and at first I thought it could be a coyote or an owl, so I pressed on. Coyotes stay off the trails, won't go after people unless they have dogs, and dogs are banned in the woods here, and they know when we do our sweeps, so I was not concerned. But then the noises got weirder. I'm used to the sounds of the woods, and I know the area and the wildlife very well, and I have never once in my life heard that sound before. It didn't come from any animal I recognize, and it most definitely was not human. I've never aborted a sweep before, even when I've had coyotes nearby, but it did not feel right, and I got out of there. If anyone has any idea what either of these things could be, please let me know. I had an experience on a night hike that I can't explain. This happened on Wednesday night. I'd like to preface by saying that I got home about an hour ago, and this actually happened. I never have paranormal encounters, and genuinely try to approach everything with a questioning mind. My partner and I like to hike at a local park late at night. It's a historic park in Pennsylvania, about 3,500 acres in size, that spans over into the Maryland and Delaware borders. One of the trails allows you to cross through all three states. The entire park is mostly dense woods with a creek running through. Usually we park near an old church with a Revolutionary War cemetery that is famous for a grave, known as the Ticking Tomb. I've been to every corner of this park, day or night. We usually hike a short loop that is roughly a half-mile in length. We've walked this trail literally thousands of times and never once felt anything strange. But tonight was different. We made a spontaneous decision to go on a night hike and left the house at about 10:45 p.m. I decided to take the narrow dirt road to our usual parking spot rather than driving a mile up the road to a paved access road like we normally do. About halfway down the ragged dirt and gravel road, as we rounded a corner, an animal dashed across the road in the path of our headlights. I've never seen anything like this animal, and I've never seen an animal that size in this area that I couldn't immediately identify. Its size was somewhere between a dog and a human, and it moved so quickly it almost looked like it flew. A literal black blur with some hazy details and bright silver eyes. My partner also saw it. I'm generally a skeptic, so I just wrote it off, and we both just kind of explained it away. We made it to our parking spot and pretty much resolved not to talk about it and continue on as usual. Immediately when we got out onto the trail, we noticed the frogs and cicadas were extremely loud, louder than I've ever heard them at night around here. As we progressed down the trail, it felt like we had to talk over the cicadas. We sort of quietly yet frantically attempted at lightening the mood with conversation. Unbeknownst to me at the time, about 100 meters down the trail my partner had begun to hear what he thought were extremely distant voices. I also noticed that the cicadas got progressively quieter the further we got down the trail. We made it about a quarter mile before a sudden louder sound felt like it cut through the space between my ears. It was something like a glitching microphone or megaphone way off in the distance. My partner pointed out to me later that there was nothing for the echo to bounce off of in that area. The moment we heard that sound, I stopped immediately and asked if he heard it too. Not only had he heard it, but he was convincing himself that he was hallucinating the sounds until I finally acknowledged it. Without discussion, we both immediately turned around and started walking at a fast pace back to the car. I felt like it was a bad idea to run, but we had to leave right away. We hoofed it back to the car with the feeling that something was following us all the way to the entrance. When we finally got back into the car and started driving, the feeling of urgency didn't go away. We made it all the way down the main road to our first turn, and I felt a moment of complete confusion. As I slowed to the turn, my partner asked me, "Do you not know where you are right now?" Because neither do I. We have literally driven this road thousands of times. I made a split-second decision to turn right, which was thankfully the right choice. The next road went along the perimeter of the park and parallel with the trail we were hiking. There was tons of fog, which hadn't been there on our way in. We spent maybe 20 minutes at the park. Just as we made our way past the area that we had turned around, another animal darted across the road in front of our headlights. It looked exactly like the one we saw on our way in, only closer and in more detail. It had silver eyes and what looked like ears or horns. It was still insanely fast and either a blur or a wraith. I don't know how else to describe it. I get this really weird feeling when I think about it or talk about it. The feeling started when I saw it run across the road the second time. I feel like it's because I acknowledged that, whatever that thing was, I couldn't explain it. I feel an almost burning sensation in my sinuses, my eyes water, and I get a strange tingling in the back of my skull. Like I said before, I'm usually a skeptic when it comes to this kind of stuff, but this experience has left me rattled. I made a quick gestural sketch of what I saw on my notepad while it was still fresh in my mind. I might sit down and try to draw it in more detail later. I encountered something in the woods in Florida. My boyfriend and I went out around 10:30 to go catch possums and raccoons at my school's arboretum one night. I've run these trails for months 2 to 4 times a week, at early hours of the morning when it was still dark. I know them inside out, and I'm comfortable with them. We walk my normal route, which just consists of taking the first path left and then walking forward with 0 turns. This takes you around the perimeter of the arboretum, where you can literally see the football field and residential houses. We'd been walking about 45 minutes when I hear a noise to the left of me, like a small animal, and I look around the bushes. The grass here isn't too long. He points toward the trail and asks if I see a deer. I've got pretty good night vision and senses. I've been walking the woods by myself since I was like 10. I didn't see it, but he just kept pointing and saying that it was moving, and even said it leaped across the trail at one point. By this point, the woods were completely silent save for some very faint bug noises, but I saw and heard nothing. I jokingly asked him if he was hallucinating, and he made an offhand comment about how it was unusual for a deer to be by itself. We didn't think anything of it until after we got out of the trail. We walk another mile or so, and the terrain looks totally unfamiliar and smells super strong like weed and burning. I look at him and tell him that this wasn't the trail I usually took, and I had no idea where we were. About there the path forked into a very dark path forward, and a small trail to the right which was the direction of the entrance. Despite his insistence we go forward, I took us right. After not even 15 feet of walking that direction, I hear a faint crunch of a branch to my right and ask something like, "Did you hear that?" He takes his phone out and turns the light on, and I start looking in the field, thinking it's an armadillo or something. The grass here is incredible dense, easily 4 feet tall and up to my lower chest, but there's no trees, we verified on maps. He's holding the phone above my head for about 45 seconds to a minute, and then he just says my name, and to look. I finally look above where I was searching the grass, and I see a pair of blue slanted eyes about 9 feet tall, almost like those of a mountain lion, so bright they looked like they were glowing, even without the light. I watched them scan from his eyes to mine, and then it started moving diagonally completely silently. I grab his wrist and tell him we have to go, and start pulling him back from the trail. I told him not to run because in my mind I was trying to rationalize this being a bear. He walked backward and kept his eyes on it while I led us out forward. I took glances back occasionally, and I could see it stalking us at about a 10-foot distance. It kept moving crookedly and almost completely silent. The bushes didn't seem to move as it walked. The only thing you'd hear is the occasional crack of a small twig. After about a half mile of this, it lets out a shriek, for lack of a better word, like nothing I've heard before. I've heard mountain lions and coyotes, but this was completely different. At that point we ran out of there, screaming prayers. We could hear the crickets and other bugs crescendo and get louder as we made our way back. I called my stepdad and explained what happened to him, and he stayed on the line while we made our way out. Neither he nor I are very superstitious. We would even make jokes about my mom burning sage in our house to get rid of bad energy, but I could tell by his voice he believed us and was trying to get us out without panicking us more. The whole time we were running, my boyfriend kept telling me things like, "This isn't the right path. You need to turn," even though it was just a straight shot back. Once we made it out, he couldn't stop looking toward the woods and kept telling me his body was telling him to go back and things like that. It was super unsettling. I didn't start to panic until we got back to his house. I couldn't stand going home alone and walking by that forest at night to get back to my dorm, so I stayed at his place until sunrise. Every time I tried to close my eyes to sleep, I saw images of the eyes and these fucked up deer. I didn't sleep for about 48 hours, and when I finally did, it was a restless 2 or 3 hours nap. I've had extreme paranoia since being back and can't stand to go anywhere without him on the phone. We've tried to rationalize it, but nothing makes sense. It didn't move or sound like a bear. I've seen plenty. And there were no trees for it to have been a panther, not to mention the fact there's never been a sighting in this part of Florida for several miles. Nothing else but possibly could have had those eyes or that scream. Nor could anything else have stalked us through the woods the way it did. The only other thing I could imagine was a drone of some type, but the woods were dead silent, and we never heard any mechanical sounds.